All right, hello everybody. Hope that you are doing well today. I know that this is a little bit of a different time. Sorry about that. I had pastoral duties yesterday that prevented me from basically doing the show at that time. Sometimes that's going to happen. Unfortunately, you can't account for that. So sometimes you have to go to the hospital at certain times. So I do apologize for that. However, we are here today on Friday, December 3rd. So I hope you guys are having a good beginning of the Christmas season. Of course, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I have a very interesting episode today, and this one's somewhat of a requested topic, so it probably will take the whole episode to discuss. But first off, I want to look at the proverb here, proverb for the week. So the proverb for the week is going to be a combination of proverbs, but they're all along the same theme. And so this is coming from the book of Proverbs, chapter 24, starting at verse 30, going all the way down to verse 34. Proverbs 24, starting at verse 30, going all the way down to verse 34. I went by the field of a slacker, and by the vineyard of one lacking sense. Thistles had come up everywhere, weeds covered the ground, and the stone wall was ruined. I saw and took it to heart. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the arms to rest, and your poverty will come like a robber, and your need like a bandit. And I love this proverb here because of the imagery. If you struggle with laziness, I would really encourage you to read this proverb, and like I have, as someone who does struggle with laziness, to really take it to heart. You know, he comes by, right? This is the person who walks by the field of a slacker, the vineyard of one lacking sense. And he says, thistles had come up everywhere, weeds had covered the ground, the stone wall was ruined. What happened here? It's not kept, right? And these are things that are seemingly small things, right? Well, what does it matter that thistles have come up everywhere? What does it matter that there are weeds on the ground? What does it matter if the stone wall is ruined? We might be convinced to look at these things as, quote, little things, but it tells a larger picture. The person who's lazy isn't taking care of his field. He's not taking care of his vineyard. He's not keeping it up. He's allowing the weeds to take it over because he's not getting out and doing the work of pulling out the weeds, of taking care of the thistles, right? Of keeping the stone wall maintained. All of that requires work. And so the lazy person, though, doesn't want to do that work. And he sees all of this. He takes it to heart. He receives instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the arms to rest, and your poverty will come like a robber, and your need like a bandit. Many times people who find themselves in need, not always, but many times, there is a sense of laziness there, right? Now, they might be hard workers in some ways, but they're not hard workers in ways that actually matter. They're willing to work hard when someone's sitting over there watching them, but they don't have that drive. As soon as they get to a point to where they can rest, well, boom, they instantly rest. They don't keep it up. You have to keep working, and that's how you keep out of poverty. Now, again, this isn't everything. Poverty is a complicated issue, but there are a number of people who are in need because, yes, they are engaging in that idea. They are resting. They are slumbering when there's work to be done. Part of the problem of why we find ourselves in this situation culturally and politically is because a lot of Christians, as opposed to doing that work, chose to rest instead. I could go love my neighbor. I could try to meet up with them. It's easier to just watch the game. It's easier to just watch TV. It's easier to just, do something at the house. I could go to church. I could receive the word of the Lord. Could receive, the Lord's Supper. Could receive fellowship with fellow believers. It's easier just to sleep in. I'm just going to sleep in. And what we see happening. So it's a really good proverb. Again, it's one that I think that you should take to heart. Hopefully you will. Like I said, I've really come to love it. It definitely encourages me whenever I do start to slip back into laziness, whenever I'm tempted to get lazy. So that's the proverb for the week. Proverbs 24, verses 30 all the way down to 34. And that's the way some Proverbs are, is, there's multiple ones, but they're all kind of connected to a central theme. This one here, of course, has to do with the connection between work and wealth. You're going to have to work hard if you have wealth. And even when you have wealth, you still have to work hard, because even if you collect a lot of wealth, you've got to work hard to maintain it. Or you've got to pay somebody, right? But it still requires a lot of work. The more that you have, in many ways, the more work that you have to do. I think that's in many ways, God sort of designs it that way. Because once you just get wealthy, it's not just all relaxation. Moving on from that, though, we're going to talk about something. This was actually a requested topic here. And it has to do with evangelicals and men, and the evangelical approach to men. Basically, the question here is, why is it that evangelicals really seem to like to bully or browbeat, emotionally sort of beat up on men a lot of the times? And this is something that, I can think of different examples, right? You can, a lot of Mark Driscoll's sermons would be kind of like that, right? I'm actually going to pull up a message here from Paul Washer. I can think, James MacDonald had some sermons like this. There's a number of different people, and it just sort of seems to be that the strategy when you're talking to men is to basically just sort of browbeat them. You're not being a man enough. You need to stop doing this, stop doing that. You need to go be a man. And whereas I think that there is a place for that, that is always the go-to, and that doesn't need to be the way that it is. And I think this is in part why there are a lot of men who have walked away from the church, is because, nobody likes to be browbeaten all the time, especially nobody likes to be browbeaten when, as has been pointed out a number of times, it's as if the men can do no right, and it's if the women can do no wrong. They'll want to focus on men's sins a lot of times in the areas where men needs to grow, but they don't want to focus on the sins where women needs to grow. So not only is it, again, it would be worse if you were sort of or it wouldn't be bad if you're browbeating everybody, but it's worse because you're sort of showing partiality. So, and there's a number of different reasons why this is. I want to talk about some of the not so good reasons why I think pastors can do this. I want to talk about some of the reasons why well-meaning pastors can do this. And I really want to take a look at two approaches and see the difference. Basically, saying the exact same thing, challenging them and inspiring, and see if you can just sort of see the difference in it. So in talking about some of the reasons, though, I will say one of the reasons why we can see that pastors are particularly rough on men is because it is an opportunity for pastors to show how bold they are, how tough they are, right? How they can be a hard preacher too. These are typically the pastors who are a little bit more spineless, right? Now, again, a lot of pastors, no one has to preach the same way. Some people have a very soft style. Other people can have a very loud, very hard style, right? But there are pastors who, when it comes to culturally sensitive topics, they will be very sensitive, right? They'll use kid gloves, because they don't want to upset the people in the culture. What we see here, of course, when it comes to men, is that culturally it is okay to berate men. It's okay to mock them. It's okay to beat them down, right? Oftentimes in media, men are portrayed as fools. They're portrayed as jerks. They're portrayed as sex addicts. The idea of there just being a good, solid man in media, whether it's a commercial or a TV show or a movie, it's very rare nowadays. It's amazing. Just go back and watch a lot of the shows, from 30 years ago, and you just notice a big change between the men in those shows versus the men in the modern shows. Even if you go back and watch some of these older shows, They might have one character that was kind of silly, but he stood out because he was the silly one. Most of the men were serious, competent, good men. But nowadays, if you have a man that's a serious man in a modern show, he's the one that stands out. And usually, again, they portray him as a jerk or something, right? Or he's just uptight or whatever. He's, over ambitious, right? You have tons and tons of articles. You've got lots of people talking about this. Of course, there's the whole discussion about toxic masculinity, which is just masculinity. And so culturally, it's acceptable to berate men. And so this gives an opportunity for some pastors here to flex their muscles, if you will, right? They can really show just how tough they are, right? How bold they can be in preaching, because they're talking about something that is, culturally it's okay. It's sort of like, again, they'll talk very strongly about racism. Why? Well, because it's culturally acceptable to preach against racism. They're not going to preach this way about homosexuality. They're not going to preach this way against gossip. They're not going to preach this way against divorce. They're not going to preach this way against sexual promiscuity, but they'll talk about it when it comes to men. They'll talk about it when it comes to video games, talk about it when it comes to pornography, because, again, you can talk about these issues. So it allows them to bare their teeth, if you will, right? And it's a show. And that's for some of the pastors that, are maybe doing this for shameful gain. But there are pastors who I think are well-meaning pastors. And it just sort of seems to be... I'm trying to figure out the best way that I want to put this here. It's sort of like when you talk about believing in Christ. You almost, you don't want people necessarily believe in Christ for selfish reasons, right? But it's the right thing to do. So you don't want to believe in Jesus just so you can go to heaven, right? And because of that, right? Because we recognize that, we don't want to be operating off of selfish motivations. I think a lot of times it can come across as, again, guilt-tripping men. They say, okay, rather than talking about the good things of being a man, the good things of, entering into that phase of your life and putting away the childish things, they just sort of say, it's the right thing to do, and you need to do it, and if you're not doing it, then you're not doing the right thing, you're not being a man, you're playing around, and so it comes across more often than not, again, as a guilt trip. As just beating men down. And sometimes that approach is necessary. But I would say that maybe right now, that's done so much that maybe that's not the right approach for a lot of men on a general basis. I think right now men need to be more inspired than berated. I think men are told that they can't go out and succeed in the world. They're not allowed. They're not allowed to be men. And so they're retreating into these other places. They're retreating basically into childhood or into fantasy a lot of ways because that's where they are allowed to be men. And of course, again, right, those spaces are now being invaded and they're being told, oh, no, you can't be men in that spaces. And it's caused a lot of them to fight because they don't have anywhere else to go. And I want to take a look at these two approaches here for encouraging men or young boys to be men. And so the first one is the sort of the typical evangelical approach. And this is going to be Paul Washer speaking to men. I hope it works. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. But if not, it's Paul Washer has a message for teenagers, or Paul Washer thumps teenagers. It's on Wretched. Wretched did a thing like this, so I'm going to try to play it and see if it works. But let me pull it up here. I'm going to switch the scene here, and I'm going to pull it up and see if I can get it.
Of mixed ages, and yet he decided, I want to talk to you, young man.
If my son wanted to go when he's 16, wanted to go and be alone with a girl somewhere, I would prohibit it. And if someone said to me and asked me, "What's the matter? Don't you trust your son?" I would say, "Well, no, I don't trust my son." "Well, why don't you trust your son?" "Because I don't trust his dad." Now, listen to me. There's a reason why my son is with me. If my son wasn't with me, one of the staff members from Heartcry, I never go anywhere alone. I always have a testimony, a witness. I'm never anywhere alone. I don't trust circumstances. I don't trust the devil. I don't trust me. Put walls up everywhere. I protect myself with wisdom, but the beginning of that wisdom is that I know how frail all men are. Young people, sometimes you're too bold. You think you've got a lot more control than you actually do. I believe that young people should get to know each other in the church. I believe there should be interrelationships and fun and all kinds of things. But when you get to the point of taking someone seriously, romantically, as a possibility of a wife or something, or a husband, I want you to learn to proceed with a great deal of caution. A great deal of caution. Young men also realize this. It doesn't matter if you tell a girl 14 times a day, "We're just friends." She's not going to believe you if you're calling her all the time. Be careful how you deal with hearts, men, young men. Be very careful. First of all, if you desire a young lady because you would like to spend time with her, ask yourself, what is the commitment you're willing to make to her? Are you just wanting to use her to have feminine companionship or friendship without giving any commitment? Young men, do you really have any business thinking about a relationship with a girl if you're still a boy? If dad's still paying the insurance of your car, you're a boy. Boys don't play with girls. Men have relationships with girls, not boys. You see, guys, listen to me. This is very important. You should desire companionship. But companionship of a female requires that you be a man first. Okay? That means you're going to have to leave aside childish things. You young boys, even in your early teens, you need to be thinking about becoming men. Have you ever watched the movie Master and Commander? About the British fighting the French privateers. And when the two boats lock up, the two ships lock up in battle on the ancient seas there between England and France, the man who leads the Marines into the other boat and makes the charge is about 16 years old. The boy that's handling the helm on the boat is about 13, and he's already had his arm blown off in battle. What's the point? The point is, they were men. You live in a culture that wants to keep you as boys until you're 35. You run around with other boys. When you make money, you think about buying shoes and video games instead of saving money to put down payment on a house for a woman. You young men need to revamp the way you think. You need to think about growing into men as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. And if you say that's not what I want, then you need to forget the idea of having companionship with a woman. I most certainly wouldn't let you get near my daughter. I'd beat the living daylights out of you.
Think of it like this.
So that was Paul Washer speaking on it. And He was giving his perspective there. And let me stress here, I really like Paul Washer. I think that he's a good pastor, and I'm not so much critiquing his approach here. What I'm going to critique, though, is that the approach that he takes here, this is sort of the default approach that many evangelicals take. And, I don't disagree per se with what he's saying, right? Yeah, if you want to be with a woman, yes, that does require commitment, right? You don't need to be playing around with women if you don't want to make a commitment with them. But was anything in that at all really inspiring to these men? Or does it come across, and this is a gentler version here, right? I mean, again, Paul Washer, he's being a lot more gentle here. But for the most part, again, is it kind of berating them a little bit? You get some money, you spend it on shoes and you spend it on video games. You need to be making a down payment for a house. And if not, then you don't need to be with a girl. I wouldn't let you near my daughter. I'd beat the living daylights out of you. I mean, number one, that'll be the one thing that I would critique is why did he need to throw that in? So what we can know is resolve, I guess. I just, that kind of stuff is, it comes across as very cringeworthy to me when guys talk like that. Well, I'd beat you up. Okay. And I get here, right, he's talking to men. This is, men's conference, that kind of stuff. He's talking to young boys. So I get it. And so I'm not really speaking specifically to Paul Washer here, but into the general evangelical world, you don't really hear a message like this for women, though, do you? You don't hear this call for women to be told to be women. Be a woman that a man would want to commit to. Moreover, he's not giving them, the only benefit that he sort of offers here in regards to being a man is having companionship with a girl. Now, again, right, companionship is good. It's good to want that, right? But let's take a look at the culture. This would have made sense if women were withholding companionship from men. But they're not doing that. I mean, guy wants to go out and use a girl, he can. Guy wants to have a relationship with a girl. There's a lot of girls who would do that, even if they don't ever want to get married. So the worldview that he's speaking to, I'm not entirely convinced that it's real. Now, again, this was 4 years ago, but even back then, I don't think that it really existed. And again, this is not so much a critique of Paul Washer, but this is very much the attitude that I see in regards to men. You need to just man up. You just need to just stop, right? It's this very harsh, it's this very, you just have to do it because it's the right thing to do, so you just need to do it. And like I said, it's almost a bullying them into doing it, right? And for some times, and for some men, this is necessary. Some guys need a kick in the pants. They need to be told, you're acting like a boy, you need to grow up and be a man. But men also have to be inspired. So there's another approach that I want to take here. And this is something that's saying the same thing, but it says it a little differently. And I want you to see here when we look at this, how maybe, again, what it's saying here, how it says the same thing yet differently. Now in this, it's going to be talking about a hero, but you can, trade out hero for man. And to me, this is really where I think right now, for this point in history, we need to be communicating this message to men as well. We need to be inspiring men. So let's take a look at this other perspective.
Thank you, Henry.
Hi, Peter.
Hey, Henry, you're getting tall.
Henry, why don't you put those cookbooks in with the mixer?
Okay. You take Spider-Man's pictures, right?
I used to.
Where is he?
Henry and I agree. We don't see his picture in the paper anymore.
He, quit.
Why?
Wanted to try other things.
He'll be back, right?
I don't know.
You'll never guess who he wants to be. Spider-Man.
Why?
Well, he knows a hero when he sees one. Too few characters out there flying around like that, saving old girls like me. Lord knows, kids like Henry need a hero. Courageous, self-sacrificing people, setting examples for all of us. Everybody loves a hero. People line up for them, cheer them, scream their names, and years later they'll tell how they stood in the rain for hours just to get a glimpse of the one who taught him to hold on a second longer. I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble, and finally allows us to die with pride, even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most, even our dreams. Spider-Man did that for Henry, and he wonders where he's gone. He needs him. Do you think you could...
So that was the second approach. Of course, that's from the movie Spider-Man 2. You know, if a lot of people have seen that movie, right? But in that movie, Peter Parker, he's struggling with being Spider-Man. The whole movie is about that, right? It's about choice. It's about how doing the right thing does come at a cost, but it's worth it in the end. And again, they're both, both Aunt May, right, in that clip, and Paul Washer, they're saying very similar things. There is a right thing that you need to do, and sometimes doing that right thing does mean giving up the things that you really want. Notice what she does, though, in that here. And again, this is what I find missing so often from many of the evangelical responses to men when you're encouraging them to be men. Notice what she's saying here. Number one, she starts out by talking about the benefits of being a hero. Everyone loves a hero. They'll line up for them. They'll cheer their name. There is a positive side to doing the right thing. That's one of the things that Peter was struggling with throughout the movie, is he feels like he's being Spider-Man and he's trying to do the right thing, but there's no positive. He's late for class, he loses his job, he's not having the woman that he wants, and even now the city seems to be hating him. But she tells him there is a positive to being a hero. And of course, later on in the movie, you have the train scene, right? Where the people, when he saves them on the train, they grab him and they lift him up and they carry him over, right? It's showing this is how they're treating the hero. And that's the point of it, is to show that there are positives to doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is not just constant misery all the time. It's not just a grind and it's just miserable, and there's never any benefit, there's never any joy, but darn it, you've just got to put your nose to the grindstone and keep doing it anyway because it's the right thing. Yet that's often how it gets portrayed by evangelicals. Now, it's not always sunshine and roses. Again, a lot of times it is hard. Doing the right thing isn't easy. It's not pleasant many times, but there are benefits to doing the right thing. There are positives. I mean, again, one of the Proverbs, right? A wise man's joy is being wise. There's a positive to being wise. Does that mean it's easy always being wise? No. Christ talks about the benefits of following him. Now, he points out what? Servant's not greater than the master. Jesus suffers. Jesus suffers immensely, and his followers suffer immensely. We should expect to suffer. But he points out the positives as well. Eternal life, reward in heaven. What does he say? There is not a person who has not given up family or friends or home or materials who will not be rewarded 100-fold. The positive, this is why, again, we get this picture of Revelation where we see the new heaven and the new earth. We see what we have to look forward to. We see it's not just misery. There is a positive to this. And of course, there's positives right now. Joy is one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit that it gives to you right now. There's a positive in being a follower and a believer of Christ, in doing the right thing. There are positives of being a man as well. It is different from being a child. You do have to put away childish things. It's a different phase of life. And you can miss those things and you can appreciate that time. But there are joys to being a man. There are joys to being married. There are joys to having children. There are joys to having responsibilities. Why are so many of these evangelicals not talking about those things? Why do they not talk about the true benefits? And I think for some of them, like the more well-meaning ones, it's because they take them for granted. But I think there's a lot of guys out there right now who they're not seeing the benefit of being a man. Because they've got a whole culture out there telling them what? You don't need to be a man. It's wrong. It's bad. You're scum. You're terrible. You can't be a man. It's not worth it. You're whatever. A lot of these guys, they need to hear the positives. They need to hear the joy of being a father, how good that actually is. When your kid hugs you, it's a feeling that I can't even describe, but it's an amazing feeling. It's a very full feeling of love when your child hugs you. When your child tells you that they love you. It's fun seeing them grow and develop, learn how to walk, learn how to talk, learn how to figure things out. It's fun to get to know them. It's fun being married. Being married, a true marriage, a marriage that is, a commitment. It's not just dating 2.0, but it's an actual lifelong commitment that's not easily broken, is a wonderful thing because you can be open with your partner. You can be who you really are, and you don't have to worry about that person leaving you. Again, that's why I say that, it's a marriage that's actually, we've actually committed to be together for the rest of our lives, and it's not just essentially, again, just the next level of dating. It is a solid commitment. It is a lifelong commitment. In that commitment, when you vowed, I'm going to stay with this person through thick and thin, through sickness and health, through rich and poor, through better and for worse. You can be yourself with that person. You can be open with them. They're family now. All the blessings that come from having a family, you have that blessing with this new person now. And of course, you have the blessing of creating a family with them. Sharing in their traditions, bringing your traditions, and of course both of you passing on these traditions to your children. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Being a man is a wonderful thing. Having responsibility, having money, having property. There are lots of benefits to being a man, being able to make decisions, being able to chart your course in life and see it through, not having to be beholden to someone all the time. Evangelicals, when they're encouraging men, they need to inspire them. And so she does that. Aunt May does that in talking about the benefits of being a hero. And she does challenge him a little bit, right? She does point out the cost as well. But she does it in such a way that it's not berating. It's not putting Peter on a guilt trip. It's meant to inspire. She even says, serving as an example, being noble. And like I said, yes, she does point out the real cost. Giving up the things that we want. And yeah, being a man, you have to do that sometimes. You have to make choices. I was talking with my dad last night, and he when he was going through medical school, he was really interested in building computers and in the technology there, so he was following it. But as he was going through medical school, he had to make a choice. Even though he really enjoyed doing that, it was a strong hobby for him. He couldn't do that and do all that he needed to do to get through medical school. He had to make a choice. He had to give that up for a time. And that it came up because since he's retired now, he's gotten back to building computers again. When you have children, your life changes. You do have to make choices. There are sacrifices that you have to make. But the sacrifices are worth it. There are great benefits in being a man. And again, it is good to be a man. And it's right. It's right for young men to want to become men. It's right for men to act like men. And it made me really think about how I encourage people and discuss a lot of these topics. And I was thinking about the scriptures as well. Paul likes to inspire and encourage people more than he does berating them. Right now, again, sometimes I can't stress this enough. Sometimes you have to go more that way. So again, sometimes you have to give people a kick in the pants. When Paul is writing a letter to the Galatians, he's hard on them. And he's hard on the Corinthians, but even as he's hard on the Corinthians when he's writing to the church in Corinth, he's still really encouraging to them. He's still showing them the benefits of being a believer. He's still showing them, again, he's not just beating them down and, saying, this is the right way and you just need to do it. He is instructing them, but it's ultimately for their benefit. And I think that this goes back to a larger problem with many pastors in general. And I want to be careful here because I don't know what's in everybody's heart. So I guess, again, it's just an opinion for me, but I think there are maybe way too many pastors. They don't genuinely care for their people. They're using people. They don't see this person in the pew or this person in their church as a person with wants and wishes and desires and a future and a past. They see them as a number. They see them as a skill. Well, here's this person, they're one of 100 people in the church, and they're good at this. They'll do this. And I think that if pastors were really concerned about caring for those in their flock, we really wouldn't see as many mega churches. What you'd see is you'd see a church grow to a certain size, and then you'd see them go out and plant a new church, I think. But it's too oftentimes, I think it can be more about the numbers. How big is the church? How many programs does the church have? How nice is the sanctuary? How good is the band or the choir? As opposed to, how much do you love the people? When you craft the sermon there, are you crafting the sermon because you want to help the people who are sitting there that have been entrusted to your care, or are you crafting a sermon that'll sound good on YouTube? that'll get clicks and views? Are you saying stuff that will, draw a crowd? Or are you saying stuff that will genuinely disciple the people in your flock? And again, I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that Paul Washer, I think Paul Washer genuinely cares for his church. So I'm not throwing him in with that crowd, all right? I'm just saying I think many people, more often or not, go with the type of method that he was going with here. That's why I just wanted to use that sort of as an example, as the difference between those two. And for other people who are not pastors, though, when we're trying to encourage people, when we're wanting to inspire them, to whatever kind of way, right? Maybe you're trying to talk to them about the gospel. Maybe you're trying to talk to them about just particular values. Do you genuinely care about them? Are you genuinely trying to encourage them and instruct them? Or is it just another face, just another person? And see, this is the other aspect here. And again, this is another thing. And what, Paul Washer was getting at here is, are you just using the girls, right, for your own benefit? Is it just about self-indulgence? Or is it about a genuine commitment? Is it actually about building something with a woman, actually caring for her, actually building a life with her, having a family with her, being willing to commit, actually loving her? More often than not, are we really seeking to have genuine connections with people? Are we seeking to actually serve them and love them as Christ did? Wanting to call them out of darkness and into light? Wanting to see God work in their life? Praying for them? Or are they just a faceless person? Faceless, nameless obstacle. Faceless, nameless opportunity. One that seems like a whole lot easier, and one will get you a lot faster, but it ultimately will sort of peter out. And this is where, again, doing the right thing of actually loving people, that's not easy. This can be applied to a number of different areas. When we think about, those who are in need, when we think about the poor, how many times when we think about the poor do we want to care for the poor, we really want to address their needs, or we just want to get them out of sight and out of mind? We just want them to go away. And so if we got to give them a few bucks to just get them to leave us alone, then we just give them a few bucks so they'll just leave us alone. But is that right? Is that truly how we should handle it? Of course not, and we know that. And no, it's not easy, right? It's not easy to really care for people. It's hard. But it's so much more enriching than the current virtue signal way that we have of handling so many of these issues, be it relationships, be it caring for others, be it politics, be it evangelism, be it preaching and discipleship. That's why the right way is always the better way. It's the more fulfilling way. The wrong way, is easier. Can seem simpler. It might get you faster results. But at the end of the day, it's not what's best. It doesn't work out for what's best. And so for the men listening to this, I just want to encourage you, to do what's right, even if that means you do have to sacrifice certain things that you want. Because even though it's not like you're sacrificing those things that you want, but you're not getting anything in return. You are getting the satisfaction of doing the right thing, which, again, don't downplay that. But you're also getting the joys of having responsibility, the joys of making something of yourself, of being able to look back over your life and see that you've lived a life worth living. Not a life that's just nothing but self-indulgence. A life that impacted a variety of people. That leaves a bigger mark than just your receipt from the things that you've consumed. A life where you've passed something on to other people. And you've cared for them. And of course, again, ultimately what? A life that goes on to be with the Lord. A life where you enter into His presence and you have many crowns to lay down at His feet. All right, that's what our good deeds ultimately are, right? When we do things that are genuinely good, they become the crowns that we can then offer up to God. That's why we do good works now. So I hope you'll hear this. You'll not be beaten down. You'll not be discouraged. But instead you'll be encouraged. You'll be inspired. And I hope that we'll get past the point of a culture of constantly just berating men, of just tearing them down, making them feel like garbage. It's not a good strategy for pastors or preachers, even though I don't consider myself an evangelical. It's not a good method. It's a great method if you want to try to demoralize them. It's a great method if you want them to get more into doing the things that you don't really want them to do. But it's not always the best method, and I would say on a general basis, for this point in history, it shouldn't be our default method. It should sort of be a tool that we sort of pull out in very specific circumstances. This isn't buttering men up. It's not feeding them a bunch of lies. I'm not talking about, giving men a bunch of self-esteem. Because they don't need that. Men don't need that. They don't need self-esteem. They don't need that kind of buttering up. They do need to be inspired. In my experience, when men are inspired to do something, often they will meet the challenge. A lot of men right now, though, they're not being inspired. Berating them is not inspiring. Telling them they're scum and they're garbage and they're wrong and they're lazy and they're boys and they're not worth a relationship with a woman, that's not inspiring. That's demoralizing. I don't want to demoralize men anymore. I'd like to inspire them. Well, I think that's going to do me for today. Hope that you have enjoyed this podcast for this week. If you want to join the Discord, you can find a link in the description here. It's the tent west of Bethel, so we have a variety of different things that you can do there. Got a general channel where you can talk about whatever. There are questions that you can ask there that we'll cover in the show. And for those who have asked questions and I haven't got them to yet, don't worry, I am planning to get to them. There's, of course, channels talking about certain news and channels talking about just things, the way that the technocrats are offering. So it's good Discord. I encourage you to join it. If you like this video, of course, I guess give it a like. If not, give it a dislike. That doesn't seem to matter now. Share it, whatever, all that kind of stuff. But really the best thing you could do is just leave a comment. I love the interaction. I'd rather hear from a comment in that way. See what you thought of this. What do you think of the two methods here? What do you think of, the approach to encouraging men to be manly? Do you think evangelicals have it right? You think it's better to try to inspire them? What do you honestly think on this? I really would like to hear your thoughts. But until we meet again, hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and I will stream at you later. Thank you, everybody.